Good morning, students. So today we shall see about how the distribution of cancer is. So which is nothing but we're going to be learning about what is epidemiology. And I hope these terms are clear to you because you would have heard this in your community. Epidemiology, mortality, morbidity, and terms like these, incidence, prevalence. So all these are basically, you would have heard this when you've learned your community health nursing. Until now we have seen like what is cancer and how it happens and the two different types like the benign and the malignant. We've also seen about what are the causative factors, what actually causes this cancer to occur in a person. And today we'll see about what is the distribution about cancer and how much it has actually spread in the community and how much of problems it is being causing. Also, what are the different measures of control based on the way it is being spread in the community. So these are just basically some of the terms you should be familiar with when you say what is epidemiology. It's nothing but the study of the distribution of the particular illness or disease. And cancer epidemiology is nothing but you're dealing with the cancer problem, right? Cancer incidence refers to the number of cases of cancer in the particular population. Mortality is what it refers to the number of deaths that is due to cancer. So these are the different terms. And morbidity means it's nothing but the number of persons who are showing the particular signs and symptoms. So these are the different terms to be aware of. This particular slide is actually showing you about the global distribution of cancer. This was a kind of report produced by the WHO in 2018. Now when you see that, you can see that most of Asia, when you look at the highest numbers, that's where the highest percentage of cases or the number of cases have been. And when you say this is 48.4% in Asia, the next highest would be in Europe, which is like 23.4%. In America it was 21%. Africa was only 5.8%. And in the little countries or the continents, it was like 1.4%. So this was a report way back in 2018. Now, when you look at some of the statistics here again, this was in 2012 and 2018, when you look at it, this is about an Indian statistics. Okay, what are the number of cases in India? It says that cancer is the second biggest killer in India. And 2018 was about 10 lakhs, 2012 was 10 lakhs, 2018 it's becoming 11.5. And there is also a change, which means there is definitely an increase. So what you're actually looking at here is there is not a decrease in the number of cases. As the days goes by and the years go by, we only see that problems are increasing, the cases are increasing, and there is actually, we are not seeing any difference or depreciation in the numbers. We only can see that there is definitely an increase in the numbers. And in India, when you look at it, as we all know, cardiovascular disease is the biggest killer. As you all know, very familiarly, you would have heard about heart attacks and all that, which is the most common problems of deaths in India. But comparatively, you've seen that cancer is the second most common cause of death in India as well. And another, in specification to the particular disease, you've seen that prostate cancer is one of the main causes of death as well. And also in India, you will see about the oral cavity cancer, because the reason is tobacco, chewing and all that the people do, and that is one of the reasons about why the cases are being increasing. And also you can see that according to this statistics, oral cavity cancer is the third commonest cancer among the females. So that is very obvious in our country, because you've seen many people, at least in the rural areas, they just are used to that, chewing of tobacco and even the betel leaves and nuts and all that. So this is basically a statistical report which is actually showing you about the total deaths in cancer, and also in particular the breast cancer, oral cavity cancer, and also the very common cervical cancer. So these are the most common problems as you see, as can be differentiated among the cancer problems. Next, again you can see that this statistics is showing a differentiation between men and women and how much percentage is being affected, like the different types of cancer when you look at it. So men, again, when you see there's about 10.6% of lung cancer cases, 7.6% of stomach cancer, 7% of prostate, 6% of esophagus cancer, 5% brain, 63.8% of other types of cancers as well. Because you know that it can affect any part of the body. So, anywhere you can see there's a external growth or abnormal growth, the first thing that you would do is get it consulted. We just cannot take it for a reason that, oh no, it's just a swelling or it's just a boil and it will just go away. But when you see something abnormal which wasn't there on you, and the best way to get it is get it consulted and tested. Similarly, in women, when you see, it's about the major causes, again, when you look at it, is 47% of other cases, but apart from that, 27.5% accounts to the breast cancer cases. After that is the most common cervical or the uterine cancer. Okay, so that is another thing. And 5.3% of ovarian cancer, 4% of thyroid, and 3% of oral cavity cancer. So when you look at the other cancers, as we discussed in the previous sessions, you would have seen about the different types of cancers that I've mentioned. So when you say others, all the rest of the other types of cancers which affect the different other parts of the body will be included among this particular section. So this is just basically showing you about how it really affects men and women, and what are the main causes in men, and which is the commonest cancer amongst men and women. Now, the latest reports, when you look at it, was done by the National Cancer Registry Program, and this is a report produced by them in 2020, right? And from them we got this report saying that cancer cases in India can be estimated to be about 13.9 lakhs in 2020. So as of today, 2020, the expected or estimated numbers are like 13.9. So there's never a decrease. Even the previous slide you saw that it was 10 and 11. But now by 2020 they are thinking that it's going to be again 13.9. So obviously there's definitely a drastic increase. So we've now seen the depreciation or the decrease in the numbers. And they've also estimated that there can be a rise, which means the cases can only be increasing, and by 2025 it is being estimated that it could be about 15.7 lakhs. So you can see the amount of, and this is all, as I told you, it is depending upon one's lifestyle, the sedentary lifestyle, your food habits, your diet, your other kind of, habits, like when you say about alcohol, tobacco, and all this kind of smoking. All these are the killers, and that is the reason why we always insist that no matter what you do, you have to just create the awareness among the community, or create the awareness among the people, even in your own neighborhood. The reason is prevention. So whatever you do, you make them aware of the different levels of prevention. So what happens in your primordial level, what happens in your primary level, what happens in your secondary level, and what happens in the tertiary level. So you insist them saying that once you know that something has popped up, the best thing is go straight away, do not wait. So that means you will be well on time. So you are almost in the primary level, where attention is being given to you, it is being assessed, it's being diagnostic imaging can be done, and you can really see about how much of your body has been affected by this deadly disease. Okay, so this is what we say, and that is why we insist about the role of the nurse here is really important, because it's all about creating awareness and providing education. This again, epidemiology, when I will be talking about, is nothing but the cancer occurrence. Occurrence, again, it is showing about the different types of cancer that can occur in a person's body. So it starts off like when you look at the numbers, again, amongst men, when you look at it, prostate cancer about 25%, lung cancer is 15%, colorectal cancer is about 10%, bladder is 7%, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, this we have discussed when we were discussing about the lymphatic system and the diseases there. So 5%, and all that, skin melanoma, again it's a skin cancer. Kidney cancer is about 4%, oral and pharyngeal cancer is about 3%, leukemia or blood cancer is about 3%, and the pancreatic cancer. So these are the smaller versions, but you see that most commonly you see this prostate cancer and the lung cancer playing a very major role, and this is what is really becoming a killer among the men folk. Now, cancer mortality. So this is nothing but when you say about in women, when you look at it, the mortality is nothing but what really causes the death among the women. Again, you can see that breast cancer also plays an important role. Lung cancer is also important, because in some of the areas, when you go into the rural part of India, you can see that women smoke. That is like, I don't know if you can call it their tradition or part of their routine or culture, but we've seen that alcohol, smoking, it just happens. It's like, their routine, or it's their culture, that's what we can say. So that could be the reason which is actually causing this kind of surge in the cases of lung cancer as well. Okay. And apart from that, among women, you would very commonly see the uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, as well as the cervical cancer, very, very commonly. And the rest of the systems would be affecting like the brain and the nervous system. Leukemia is also seen, pancreatic cancer, as well as the colorectal cancer. So this actually is showing about the percentage of what is actually causing the cancer mortality among the female folk. Now among the men, when you look at it, it's about the same again. 31% is accounting to lung cancer, prostate is about 10%, again colorectal 8%, and the rest of the other cancers like pancreatic, liver, leukemia, esophageal, bladder, kidney, as well as the lymphoma is also contributing to them, but they are not as common as what it is when you look at the lung as well as the prostate cancer. Now the different types of cancer, and again this is a series showing about what really accounts in general, in not common thing. So in this again you're looking at the breast cancer, the lung cancer, and the prostate cancer is also like the common among all the types of different cancers. And again, this is only a statistical report which is just accounting. I think this really covers about almost all the cancers here in different, almost your entire body, what are the different percentage, and this is actually showing you the different types of cancer and how much it is affecting the person. Now, so that is about epidemiology. So we've just briefly known about how much of a killer disease it is when you look at even India and when you're looking at the other countries, and we've also learned about how much it is expected to come as well in the coming years. And also we've seen about the gender difference as well in the males, what is the main reason or what are the main types of cancer that is showing up, as well as in the females. Now this slide actually is telling you about the 7 warning signs, which is very, very important for every one of us to know. And as nurses, it's very, very crucial, because when a person comes to you or when a patient walks into you, into your ward or into your clinic, wherever you're working, you should be in a thorough form of assessing the patient, because you should be really aware of these things, because that is the way we do a complete nursing assessment. So the first step that you do with the patient is nothing but your nursing assessment. So that includes your ADPI and the SOPIA. So there you're going to be thoroughly investigating and interviewing the patient, and these are the general questions you need to ask. And as nurses, you should be aware of these. Like the first one is there any change in your bowel and bladder habits? Everybody would know when it is not from normal, but if you're frequently visiting, or whether it's your bowel and bladder, if there's pain for some reason, or even when you're passing your stools and motion, you feel that there's some pain happening. All these things, as nurses, maybe the patient may feel a bit embarrassed to tell you these things. I don't know, it's individual differences. But as nurses, it's your responsibility, especially when you're working in an oncological area, you should be thoroughly aware of these questions. And these are the things, because this is actually instigating or showing you that, yes, there can be something wrong when the person says that, okay, this is happening to me. And I'm not telling this once, but if it is a daily process when a patient is trying to move his bowel and bladder, when you know that that's happening, if he's really complaining of some pain or distension or something not from the normal, when anything like that is happening, it's very important that you should pay real attention to it. Also, the next warning sign is a sore that does not heal, which is nothing but like a boil. Even, the patient may just take it for granted it's a mosquito bite or something like that. But we just cannot ignore it, because a mosquito bite can just go. It bites you today, by the end of the day or by tomorrow it's disappeared. But when something is going on, thinking that little bite, when it turns out as a red boil, and then it starts, you start itching, there's a kind of inflammation there, you find swelling, and all you can see is it is growing in size. So when you feel something like that, we don't have to be really thinking that, oh my God, I've got cancer, that is not the deal. But it is important the patient tells you about this, or you are, as a nurse, your responsibility to ask him, is there something like this going on in your body? When you know that, when he's coming to show you. Or even when this has happened, how many days has it been? When did you actually notice it? What was the size when you noticed it? Or what did it look like when you noticed it first? So this is how you ask different questions, so that you can see how much of difference has been from the day one the patient has noticed it until today. The next one is unusual bleeding or discharge from any opening in the body. Again, this is applicable to both male as well as the female. So anything like that, when you know that a patient comes to you, because obviously you will be doing investigations, yes, your blood test and all that, So once you know the blood test numbers are something, when you feel that okay, her hemoglobin is low, you definitely know there is a lack of iron deficiency there. And again, what happens? So you should be going, okay, where is this loss happening from? So as a nurse, you should be having the thorough knowledge of asking these questions to the patient and finding out what has been with the normal and how long has he or she been noticing this kind of change, and even if it is bleeding, how long does it bleed, or does it even clot, or is it just happening, and haven't you been to any doctors, or haven't you got it consulted until today? So these are the different kind of nurse initiations that you would do and ask the patient, because the patient may really not know what is going on. So you as a nurse, especially when you're dealing with this particular deadly disease like cancer, these are the important signs you should be aware of. Then the next thing you'll be focusing on is unexplained weight loss and loss of appetite, because the patient may tell you, okay, I'm not feeling hungry, I don't feel like eating, and and obviously you would do your vitals when a patient comes, the basic parameters like height, weight, you would be checking. So you would also know, okay, this particular age, this particular personality, and this particular height should have a certain weight. Okay, so when you know that yes, it is not the normal, then obviously you will be asking him more questions about his lifestyle and what he eats as well as his diet. The next one is difficulty in swallowing or chronic indigestion, because that also happens because you never know there's something in the throat. Again, this is involving the oral cavity, so something related to your throat cancer or some kind of esophageal cancer, when you feel that it is not going, and then when there is some kind of indigestion happening, so there can be something related to your stomach cancer as well. So all these are the different questions, simple questions, as you basically talk to your patient, you will be asking and you will be taking off and you will be writing the reason, yes, this is going on with the patient. The next thing is lumps anywhere in the body, and the seventh one is a persistent cough. Persistent means a non-stop, which goes on and on for no reason. You're just, even though we may think that it's a cold season, maybe you have a sore throat or you have a cold and you're coughing, but for some people you must have seen that there's a non-stop nagging cough which goes on, and also this hoarseness in voice. Hoarseness means what? That kind of, a big voice, which is not there usually, but for some reason, because of the voice, there's a change, that is what is called as the hoarseness. So these are the different kind of questions you would ask, and as a nurse, you should be thoroughly aware of these questions. Okay, so these are the basically 7 warning signs of cancer, and once you know that something, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of these are present in a patient, you should take it into consideration, and that will be your priority to actually assess, and also you need to go send in for proper diagnostic tests and investigations to know more about this particular signs and symptoms. Now, what are the root causes and cofactors of cancer? Again, this has already been discussed in your previous slides, which I told you is about, external factors, internal factors, even obesity, type 2 diabetes, your sedentary lifestyle, which is nothing but how the kind of, monotonous lifestyle we've got these days by just sitting at the desk, lack of physical activity, and, eating just junk. So whatever you get, you find, you just grab and eat. You're not worried about how much is it really a nutritious food. So again, on your list as a role of nurse when you're educating, that balanced diet is always there. So you as a nurse will be insisting and showing the importance to the patient as well as the family about definitely having that balanced diet, the triangle what we have learnt. So that much about fruits, your vegetables, your meat, your dairy, everything. And how much of oil should be consumed, how much of salt should be consumed. All this is like a basic normal knowledge, awareness that you're going to be creating among the patient as well as the family. Another cause is your weakened immunity, poor diet, nutrition deficiencies. Again, genetic is also a factor because that we cannot change. Again, the add-on factors can be stress. See, stress is also a killer. In no way what you can do is, and insomnia, even lack of sleep. And that is the reason why we say that, yes, to rest is very important. You need to get an adequate amount of sleep and, make sure your body is out of stress. So that is also a contributing factor. Smoking, alcohol, environmental toxins, toxicity and acidity, pharmaceutical drugs. Again, as I told you, these are nothing but your, so many patients are on long-term medications for some reason, and which they have to take. But some people, again, they never know. They don't know. Even for a mild pain, they may go be taking Brufen, which is not necessary, when because some people don't have the tolerance. Even a slight pain, how you're going to be tolerating and how you feel that you can divert the patient's attention from that, and rather than just jumping on a tablet and having it, why do you want to put your body into that stress? So that is the reason. So why we say that even the drugs that the patient is having also can be a contributing factor. And when you say nutrition deficiencies, it is nothing but your different kind of deficiencies based on your vitamins and minerals and all that. So basically your the kind of diet you are into. Again, the etiological factors, this is another version of it, which, I mean, even when you're doing your exams, when you get this question, I would like you to write it like this by classifying them into biomedical factors, lifestyle factors, as well as environmental factors. Okay, we have learned it in general, okay, as we just saw it in the previous slide, but it's a nicer version of putting it like this. Okay, so biomedical factors, again, is nothing but your genetic as well as your hormonal factors, which it's not under your control, it's your body. Okay, so what can we do about it? So these are the things you would be telling the nurses or when you go to the hospital for consultation, and when we know that, then they will be putting you on some kind of medical treatment for that. Okay, lifestyle factors definitely is modifiable, because yes, you can bring in a change about you. There's no reason why you have to have your smoking or alcohol and this kind of junk food that we eat. There's no necessary, but this definitely there can be a change that can happen. And also incorporating physical activity, very, very important, because even this COVID period was like that, isn't it? For about the last few months, everybody has just been at home, and even though yes, we are at home doing our work, but that itself has caused a lot of psychological problems in many people. Again, that is actually adding on to the stress factor. Correct? Stress factor, physical activity has been very low for, I think, almost the whole world. When you look at it for the last few months. But we're not sitting at it. We are actually going back slowly to our normal pace, because when we know that yes, everything is open now, people have started their walks, people have started their exercises, people have started their workouts and all that. So it's you have to catch up with that, because physical activity is really, really important. Environmental factors again contributes to your sunlight, radiation, as well as occupational exposure, as well as pollution. So occupational exposure I just mentioned to you as well, when people are dealing with chemicals, any kind of chemicals or some kind of chemical substances when they are involved in their work, even inhaling gases, even that is also a problem. So these are the things which, and okay, we cannot say that you don't go to work, but when you go to such kind of an occupation, it is important that even the employer as well as it makes sure that the employees are the person working there, he should be given proper gears, means proper attire, like you have to wear your masks, you need to be wearing your boots, you need to be wearing gloves, you need to be wearing your hat when you're exposed to all these, I'm telling you. Or you need to be wearing a particular, because some of the chemicals, when it just touches your skin, it gets absorbed. So, on a daily basis, you're just doing your job. But as the day goes by and you've been working in that particular industry for about 8 or 10 years, you can imagine how much your body has actually absorbed. Okay, be it your breathing or be it how your skin absorbs these things. So very important that you make sure that particular person is using the particular gears or whatever that he has to be used. Like example is nothing but your the masks and the gloves as well as the boots when he is standing in that particular environment and doing this particular job. So these are the causes. This slide again, it is just giving us the percentage about what it is and what is actually contributing to these particular, causes of cancer. Again, it is saying that obesity, alcohol, infections, environmental, occupational factors, as well as the carcinogens. Carcinogens are nothing but what actually causes cancer. So this is actually based on your etiology. We've got a kind of a pie chart which is depicting the percentage of causes. Now the different types of cancer cells, as I mentioned to you even the last session, there are two types, like benign and malignant. So benign, this is how it looks like. Malignant is nothing but it's literally breaking out and it's literally invading the surrounding tissues and it is spreading rapidly. Okay, so benign, and this is how when you draw the cell structure, this is how it looks like, and this is a benign tumor which is enclosed within. But when you look at the malignant, it's very obvious, yes, it is out of there. Yeah, you can see how it is and it is how it is coming out and how it is actually spreading or invading the surrounding areas of tissues. So that is exactly what is the difference between benign and malignant. So what you really need to be worried about is when you know it is malignant and when there is metastasis. So metastasis is nothing but how the cancer really spreads to the surrounding areas. But again, it doesn't mean that you are going to be thinking that, oh yes, it is just a small bite, it will not spread and it's going to be nothing. So we cannot ourselves conclude that it's going to be a benign tumor and we're going to be sitting quiet. But yes, whatever said and done, you have to get it consulted and tested just to be sure. Yes, it is only a growth which can actually be removed surgically. Sometimes you also have this kind of polyps, like the cyst and all that happening to the patients. or some kind of a lump when when a patient says that this suddenly I can see a lump on my shoulder. But when you go get assessed, it can be, yes, it is just a growth which can be removed. So when you know that, and it's not malignant. So that itself gives you the satisfaction that, okay, I'm not into something called as cancer. So when you say it is only benign, it can be removed surgically and that's it. There is no more spread or there's not going to be this particular tumor anymore. But when you know that something else is happening, the cells are really going crazy, the cells are dividing, multiplying, and all that cell changes are occurring in a very drastic manner. And when this kind of a situation occurs, you know that definitely it is actually invading into your surrounding areas and tissues. And obviously, you know, once that occurs, it is definitely going to be causing organ damage. Correct? Now, what are the characteristics when you look at the benign and malignant kind of tumors? This is the way you would be writing it. If you get a question in your examination to asking you about what is the difference between benign and malignant, you will be clearly giving a thorough, a table form of classification like this, based on their differentiation, the growth rate, the local invasion, as well as the metastasis. So what happens in differentiation? When you look at the benign as well as the malignant, you say that well differentiated appearance, structure similar to the tissue of origin, and little or no anaplasia. Because what happens is, when as you saw in the previous picture, there is no major change in the particular cell. Yes, there is minute changes, but again, it is within the cell and there is nothing breaching the surrounding areas. But whereas in the malignant, usually some lack of differentiation and structure is often atypical. So basically, as I told you, when you're looking at a cell, the cell type, the shape, the morphology is very important, because in the first session I have told you about what is the difference between normal and cancerous cells. So basically, looking at that under the microscope itself, you will know that no, this is actually not looking as normal. So that is the way you will be classifying about the structure. The growth rate, again, in benign, it can be slow and progressive and rare mitotic figure. So mitotic is nothing but the cell division. Okay, mitosis and meiosis, I hope you remember. So again, there is no major changes in that kind of cell division that is occurring. And whereas in the malignant type, you can see that it can be slow to a rapid growth, and sometimes it can be erratic. Erratic means very outstanding growth, or the cells are multiplying and duplicating in a very high manner. So it is really fast and it is affecting the surrounding areas thoroughly. Local invasion, which is nothing but no invasion, and expansile growth, which is nothing but it is not really affecting the surrounding tissues. Whereas in the malignant, you see that yes, there is infiltrative growth, which is exactly what you saw in this previous slide here. It is actually infiltrating and causing problems to your surrounding tissues as well. And metastasis, as I told you, there is no metastasis or the spread of the cancer usually in a benign type, whereas over here there is frequent metastasis in this kind of tumor, or the growth is being seen. And when you classify it as malignant, yes, there is no capsule when you look at the cell. Okay, so that is why we say that it is actually out and it is actually spreading to the other portions of the body. Now this is just a sample showing you what is the meaning of mitosis and meiosis. I hope you remember this when you learned your cell. You should be, I guess. So mitosis and meiosis are nothing but the cell division, and how this, the parent cell is divided into two daughter cells and having the same number of chromosomes, whereas the parent chromosomes are remaining the same. Whereas in the meiosis, you see that the parent numbers decrease and this gets divided into 4 gamete cells. So this is the meaning of mitosis and meiosis. And what else? Now, what are the known risk factors? Now, risk factors of cancer, again, as we have learnt in our cardiovascular, I hope you remember, we would be able to classify it as modifiable and non-modifiable. I hope you remember this, which we had discussed in our cardiovascular session. So similarly, even here you can see that tobacco, alcohol, radiation, unhealthy diet, occupational exposure, reproductive factors, certain microbes, because nothing but infections, obesity, as well as family history. So these are the known risk factors. Now, a better way to put this is classifying them into modifiable as well as non-modifiable. So modifiable is something which you can change, and non-modifiable is which it's not in your control, but you have to deal with it, and you have now age. We can't, but we can take measures to make sure we are hale and healthy. So means this when you know that something like this, when I have a family history, what you would do you would ensure that you will be eating a good diet, you will be doing your exercises, you will not be indulging in other bad kind of habits like smoking, alcohol. So you are literally taking the precautionary measures in making sure that you will not end up as a target. Because you have this family history or because you have the particular genes, you are not going to fall prey for that, thinking that, oh yes, I have it, I have to live with it. No, that doesn't work. But we as humans, we can try to change this by inculcating good healthy habits. Okay, so this is what we have classified as modifiable as and non-modifiable kind of risk factors for cancer. So today's session we can end it here. We shall meet you in the next session. Thank you.